The radio telescope in Chile's Atacama Desert caught it first, a transmission that shouldn't exist. Area Chen stood motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the cascading lines of data that danced across the multiple screens before her. At 28, she was the youngest lead astronomer at the International Deep Space Monitoring Station, a position she'd earned through an uncanny ability to detect patterns where others saw only noise. The signal was unlike anything in human records. Mathematical sequences woven through the data like living algorithms, breathing with an intelligence that seemed to defy conventional understanding. Each pulse carried a complexity that suggested not just communication, but a form of thought so alien it challenged the very definition of consciousness. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, triangulating the signal's origin with a precision that seemed almost intuitive. The massive telescope array around her hummed with potential, its massive dishes positioned like silent sentinels waiting to unlock a cosmic mystery. Outside the climate-controlled observation room, the desert stretched endlessly, a landscape as stark and unforgiving as the data unfolding before her. Dr. Chen called her assistant. "Miguel, you need to see this." A holographic display materialized between them, showing the first shadows of an approaching fleet at the solar system's edge. The scale was impossible to comprehend. Thousands of energy signatures clustered together, forming a pattern that suggested only one thing: an imminent invasion. Aria's mind raced. Years of theoretical work, countless nights spent analyzing potential extraterrestrial communication methods, had prepared her for this moment. Yet nothing could truly prepare anyone for the reality now unfolding. The signal wasn't just a message. It was a declaration of intent. She reached for the emergency communication protocol, her hand steadied, despite the magnitude of what she was about to report. Global defense networks would need to be activated. Every scientific institution, every military command center would need to be alerted. Humanity had exactly 72 hours to prepare. The first transmission went out encrypted through multiple international channels. No panic, just pure, concentrated information. The mathematical patterns she discovered contained more than just a warning. They were a key to understanding the approaching threat. "We are not alone," Aria whispered to herself, "and we are definitely not defenseless." As the first reports began to filter through global communication networks, something extraordinary started to happen. The initial fear began to transform into something else, a collective resolve that spread faster than any invasion could advance. Scientists began comparing notes. Military strategists started drawing up unprecedented collaboration plans. An entire planet began to move with a single unified purpose. The Krell had no idea what was coming. The United Nations headquarters in New York transformed overnight. What was once a building of diplomatic negotiations became the nerve center of humanity's most critical defense initiative. The main assembly hall now looked like a futuristic war room, with holographic displays showing real-time data from every corner of the globe. General Michael Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, a veteran strategist who had spent his entire career preparing for scenarios no one believed would ever happen. To his left, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura from Japan's top quantum research institute adjusted complex mathematical models. To his right, Fatima Al-Rashid, a brilliant systems engineer from Dubai, worked on integrating global communication networks. "We have 68 hours, Rodriguez announced, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos. "Every resource, every technology we have is now dedicated to a single objective: planetary defense." The room represented a microcosm of global cooperation that would have been impossible just days earlier. Russian cybersecurity experts traded insights with American satellite engineers. Chinese quantum physicists collaborated with Brazilian material scientists. The traditional barriers of nationality, ideology, and competition had evaporated in the face of an existential threat. Underground facilities began to activate across continents. In the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, advanced defense systems that had been theoretical projects now sprang to life. Massive data centers in Silicon Valley redirected every ounce of computational power toward analyzing the alien signal. Research laboratories from Cape Town to Moscow began sharing data at unprecedented speeds. Dr. Elena Yoshida, leading the global communication strategy team, discovered something remarkable. The alien signal wasn't just a threat. It was a complex communication protocol that could be studied, understood, and potentially turned against the incoming invasion. Her team began developing adaptive communication algorithms that could potentially disrupt alien technological systems. "We're not just defending," she told her international team. "We're learning. We're adapting." In orbital research stations, international teams worked around the clock. Satellites were being reconfigured, their purposes transformed from observation to defense. Each nation contributed its most advanced technologies, creating a planetary defense network that was more than the sum of its parts. The true strength of humanity wasn't in its individual capabilities, but in its ability to collaborate. Countries that had been bitter rivals weeks ago now shared classified technologies without hesitation. Military strategists from opposing nations sat side by side, drawing up defense plans that leveraged the unique strengths of each culture and technological approach. Young researchers who had spent years working on theoretical technologies now found themselves at the forefront of humanity's most critical moment. Quantum communication experts, artificial intelligence developers, material scientists, everyone had a role to play. As the hours ticked down, something profound was happening. Humanity was transforming. No longer a collection of competing nations, they were becoming a single, unified intelligence. The incoming alien fleet would encounter something they could never have anticipated. A planet that could think, adapt, and respond as a single living organism. The Krell had no idea what was coming. The abandoned research facility outside Buenos Aires looked like nothing special from the outside. Rusted gates and weathered concrete walls concealed the most important scientific breakthrough in human history. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez moved between holographic displays, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to blur the line between technology and imagination. What had begun as a theoretical experiment in quantum communication was about to become humanity's ultimate defense mechanism. Years of research into consciousness, communication, and emergent systems had led to this moment. The breakthrough wasn't about building a better weapon. It was about understanding connection itself. Marcus's team represented a global collaboration unlike any in human history. Dr. Aisha Khan from Pakistan's top quantum research institute stood next to Dr. Lu Wei from Beijing's Advanced Communications Laboratory. Researchers from Kenya, Russia, Australia, and Brazil worked together, as if they were a single organism, each bringing unique perspectives to a problem that defied traditional understanding. The core of their discovery was elegantly simple yet mind-bendingly complex. By mapping the fundamental resonance of human consciousness, they had created a defense network that could think, adapt, and respond faster than any centralized system. Traditional computing was linear. This was something else entirely. "It's not about individual intelligence," Marcus explained to the team, his eyes blazing with excitement. "It's about collective consciousness. Each node can make independent decisions while simultaneously contributing to a larger whole." The quantum communication network they were developing was unlike anything in human or alien technological history. It drew inspiration from the most unexpected sources: ant colony behaviors, neural networks in the human brain, even the complex communication systems of trees in ancient forests. Holographic displays showed intricate patterns of communication that seemed to breathe and move like living things. Mathematical models danced across screens, showing potential communication strategies that could simultaneously defend, analyze, and potentially communicate with the incoming alien fleet. Dr. Elena Yoshida's communication team worked in perfect synchronization with Marcus's quantum researchers. They were developing a language of defense that was more than just a technological response. It was a form of intellectual martial art. Each potential alien communication strategy was analyzed, understood, and could be countered almost instantaneously. The facility buzzed with an energy that was part scientific discovery, part global defense initiative. Researchers who had spent years working in isolated laboratories now found themselves at the center of humanity's most critical moment. Every breakthrough, every insight was immediately shared across global networks. "We're not just preparing a defense," Marcus told his team during a critical briefing. "We're creating a new form of collective intelligence. The Krell are going to encounter something they cannot possibly understand." As the hours ticked down, the quantum communication network began to take shape. It was more than a defensive system. It was a living, breathing entity that could think, adapt, and respond with a speed and complexity that defied traditional technological understanding. The Krell had no idea what was coming. The first 2,000 Krell ships entered Earth's orbital space with absolute confidence. Their sensor arrays painted a picture of what seemed like an easy conquest: a primitive planet, a fractured species, a world ripe for harvesting. Commander Zarak of the lead invasion vessel studied the holographic displays with clinical detachment, expecting nothing more than a swift and methodical subjugation. What the Krell encountered was beyond their comprehension. The moment the first ships crossed the orbital boundary, they found themselves in a battlefield that defied every known principle of warfare. Satellites that moments before appeared to be simple communication and observation tools transformed with impossible speed. Each orbital platform became a weapon of surgical precision, moving with an intelligence that suggested something far more complex than mere programmed defense systems. Orbital debris, decades of human space exploration remnants, suddenly came to life. What should have been inert space junk became guided missiles that danced between the alien ships with impossible maneuverability. Each piece of debris seemed to have its own targeting system, its own intelligence. Communication networks that the Krell had initially scanned as primitive communication channels revealed their true nature. These were not simple transmission lines but living, adaptive systems that could predict, analyze, and counter alien technological approaches in milliseconds. The invaders' own communication protocols were being turned against them, creating a cascading system of technological disruption. At the Global Defense Command Center, Dr. Elena Yoshida watched the unfolding scenario with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic focus. Her team had prepared for this moment, developing communication strategies that were more than just defensive. They were a form of intellectual warfare. "It's not about stopping them," she muttered to General Rodriguez, who stood beside her. "It's about making them understand they've made a fundamental mistake." The quantum communication network developed by Dr. Marcus Rodriguez came to life in ways no one could have fully predicted. Each defensive node was making independent decisions while simultaneously contributing to a collective intelligence. The alien ships found themselves caught in a technological dance they couldn't comprehend. Every move anticipated, every strategy countered before it could be fully implemented. Massive ground-based defense systems, hidden in mountain ranges and underground facilities, began to activate. These were not traditional weapons but adaptive platforms that could reconfigure themselves in real time. Entire sections of terrain could transform, creating electromagnetic interference fields that disrupted alien ship systems. Within hours, the first wave of 2,000 ships was reduced to floating debris. The surviving Krell crews found themselves unable to process what had happened. Their sensor arrays, their communication systems, their entire understanding of technological warfare had been completely dismantled by a species they had considered primitive. Commander Zarak stared in disbelief at the rapidly deteriorating tactical display. Every strategic approach, every calculated invasion strategy was being systematically neutralized by an intelligence that seemed to think faster than thought itself. The Krell had no idea what was coming. Dr. Elena Yoshida understood something profound about communication that the Krell could never comprehend. Language was more than just a transmission of information. It was a living, breathing entity that could reshape reality itself. As the invasion progressed, her team began broadcasting signals that were far more than simple defensive measures. The communication center looked like a cathedral of technology. Massive holographic displays surrounded researchers from every corner of the globe. Each workstation represented a different approach to what was becoming humanity's most complex dialogue with an alien intelligence. "We're not just defending," Elena told her international team. "We're communicating in a language they've never encountered before." The transmissions were living narratives, complex mathematical puzzles embedded with cultural information, psychological insights, and adaptive communication protocols. Each signal carried layers of meaning that went far beyond traditional communication. They were designed to do more than disrupt alien systems. They were meant to fundamentally challenge the Krell's understanding of intelligence itself. Aboard the Krell ships, something extraordinary began to happen. The human transmissions started to penetrate their communication systems in ways no technological shield could prevent. Alien crew members found themselves experiencing fragments of human memories, snapshots of human experiences that defied their understanding of individual consciousness. A Krell communication officer named Exinal experienced a memory of a child learning to ride a bicycle. Another received the complex emotional landscape of a musician performing on stage. These were not simple data transmissions. They were entire lived experiences, transmitted with a complexity that challenged everything the Krell understood about communication and consciousness. The psychological impact was devastating. Entire ship crews found themselves questioning their mission, their civilization's fundamental beliefs. The rigid hierarchical structure of the Krell collective began to fracture under the weight of these unexpected transmissions. Dr. Yoshida's team had created something beyond a defensive strategy. It was a form of intellectual warfare that attacked the very foundations of the alien civilization. Each transmission was a carefully crafted puzzle, mathematical sequences that carried emotional resonance, cultural insights that challenged fundamental assumptions about existence. "We're showing them what it means to be human," Elena explained to General Rodriguez. "Not through force, but through the most powerful weapon we have, our ability to connect, to understand, to imagine." Some Krell ships simply stopped fighting, overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of human consciousness. The transmissions created a form of cognitive dissonance that their rigid technological systems couldn't process. It was as if humanity was rewriting the very rules of communication, of understanding, of existence itself. The quantum communication network developed by Dr. Marcus Rodriguez worked in perfect synchronization with Elena's team. Each transmission was a living, breathing entity, adaptive, intelligent, capable of responding and changing in real time. As the hours passed, more and more Krell ships found themselves caught in a psychological maze they couldn't escape. The invasion was no longer about technological superiority. It had become a battle of consciousness itself. The Krell had no idea what was coming. Earth was no longer just a planet. It had become a sentient organism of unprecedented complexity, a living defense system that understood survival in ways the Krell could never comprehend. The transformation began deep beneath the surface, in massive underground facilities that had been decades in preparation. In the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Dr. Maya Chen watched holographic displays that showed the planet's adaptive response to the invasion. Mountain ranges could reconfigure themselves into defensive platforms. Entire ecosystems became coordinated combat units, each element working in perfect synchronization. The quantum communication network developed by Dr. Marcus Rodriguez had evolved into something far beyond its original design. It wasn't just a defensive system. It was a planetary nervous system that could think, adapt, and respond with impossible speed and complexity. Geological systems became part of the defense mechanism. Electromagnetic fields could be manipulated with precision. Tectonic plates could shift microscopically to create interference patterns that disrupted alien technologies. Weather systems became adaptive communication networks, carrying information and defensive strategies across continents. "We're not just defending," Dr. Chen explained to her team. "We're demonstrating a form of intelligence that transcends technological understanding." Underground research facilities that had been working in isolation for years now collaborated with a speed and precision that defied traditional scientific methodology. Each breakthrough was immediately shared across global networks. Technologies that were once theoretical became living, adaptive systems. The Krell found themselves fighting something they couldn't comprehend. Their invasion strategies, developed over centuries of galactic conquest, became useless against a planet that could think faster than their most advanced computational systems. Satellite networks transformed into adaptive communication platforms. Each orbital system could reconfigure itself in milliseconds, creating defensive patterns that were impossible to predict. What appeared to be simple communication satellites became complex nodes in a planetary defense network. In the Amazon rainforest, research teams discovered how natural ecosystems could be integrated into the defensive strategy. The complex communication networks of root systems, the adaptive capabilities of different species, everything became part of a global defense mechanism. Dr. Elena Yoshida's communication teams worked in perfect synchronization with the geological and ecological defense systems. Each transmission was now part of a living, breathing planetary response. The line between technology, biology, and consciousness began to blur. Massive underground facilities in various continental locations began to activate. These were not traditional military installations, but adaptive research centers that could transform their entire purpose in milliseconds. Technologies that were once theoretical became living, responsive systems. The planet itself seemed to be learning, adapting, responding to the invasion with an intelligence that went far beyond any traditional understanding of defense. Each invasion approach was anticipated, analyzed, and neutralized before it could fully develop. General Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic focus. Humanity had transformed from a collection of competing nations into a single unified intelligence. The Krell had no idea what was coming. Of the 10,000 ships that initially descended, less than 200 remained operational. These were not survivors. They were prey. Commander Zarak of the Krell Collective stared at the tactical displays with growing horror. What had begun as a calculated invasion had transformed into a nightmare beyond comprehension. The remaining Krell ships moved through the solar system like wounded animals, each moment bringing new terrors they could not understand or anticipate. Defensive platforms moved with a predatory intelligence that defied all known principles of warfare. What appeared to be simple satellites could reconfigure themselves in milliseconds, creating hunting patterns that seemed to predict Krell movements before they could be implemented. Communication networks created phantom targets, leading entire squadrons into carefully designed traps that dismantled their technological capabilities piece by piece. In the Global Defense Command Center, Dr. Elena Yoshida and General Rodriguez watched the final stages of the confrontation with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic precision. Their quantum communication network had transformed the entire solar system into a living, breathing defensive ecosystem. "We're not just defending," Elena murmured, her eyes tracking the holographic displays. "We're teaching them a fundamental lesson about intelligence." Each Krell ship found itself caught in an increasingly complex web of planetary defense. Mountain ranges could shift to create electromagnetic interference. Ocean currents became communication networks that carried adaptive defensive strategies. Even the atmosphere itself seemed to become a weapon, creating interference patterns that disrupted alien technologies. The remaining Krell crews experienced something unprecedented in their galactic history. Their most advanced technologies became increasingly unreliable. Communication systems failed. Navigation became impossible. Each attempt to retreat or counterattack was met with a response so sophisticated, so adaptive, that it seemed to think faster than thought itself. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez's quantum communication network had evolved into something far beyond its original design. It was a living intelligence that could analyze, predict, and neutralize alien technologies in milliseconds. The defensive systems were no longer just responding. They were learning, adapting, growing more sophisticated with each interaction. Satellite networks transformed into hunting platforms. Orbital debris became guided weapons with impossible maneuverability. Communication networks created intricate traps that dismantled Krell technological capabilities piece by piece. Commander Zorak realized the fundamental truth of their situation. This was not a battle. It was a systematic dismantling of everything the Krell understood about technological warfare. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had rewritten the very rules of conflict, of intelligence, of survival. The final Krell ships moved through the solar system like ghosts, each moment bringing new horrors. They were no longer an invasion force. They were specimens being studied, analyzed, systematically neutralized by an intelligence they could never comprehend. In the Global Defense Command Center, a sense of calm determination replaced the earlier tension. Humanity had not just survived. They had demonstrated a form of collective intelligence that would reshape understanding of consciousness itself. The Krell had no idea what was coming. When the final battle concluded, only 37 alien ships escaped Earth's immediate vicinity, and these were so damaged they would never again be considered a fighting force. The Global Defense Command Center erupted in a moment of collective relief that transcended national boundaries, cultural differences, and individual achievements. Dr. Elena Yoshida stood beside General Rodriguez, watching the final tactical displays. The invasion that was meant to end humanity had instead become a defining moment of human potential. Every nation, every research institution, every individual had contributed to a defense that rewrote the understanding of intelligence, cooperation, and survival. Commander Zorak of the Krell Collective transmitted a message back to their homeworlds, a communication that would fundamentally reshape their entire civilization's understanding of humanity. The transmission was a mixture of technical data, psychological analysis, and a profound admission of complete strategic failure. The quantum communication network developed by Dr. Marcus Rodriguez had proven to be more than a defensive system. It was a living testament to human potential, a demonstration of collective intelligence that could adapt, learn, and respond with a speed and complexity that defied all known technological principles. Massive data archives began compiling every moment of the invasion. Scientific institutions around the world started analyzing the unprecedented defensive strategies. What had appeared to be a potential extinction event had transformed into humanity's most significant moment of collective achievement. We didn't just survive, Dr. Maya Chen explained during the first global briefing after the invasion. We demonstrated a form of intelligence that goes beyond technology. We showed that our greatest strength is our ability to connect, to adapt, to imagine. The 37 surviving Krell ships carried back more than just a message of defeat. They carried evidence of a civilization that could transform an overwhelming invasion into a complete strategic defeat. Each damaged ship was a testament to human potential, a warning to any civilization that might consider Earth a potential target. Global communication networks began broadcasting a message of unity and potential. The invasion had done what decades of international cooperation could not. It had truly unified humanity. National boundaries seemed meaningless. The collective achievement transcended every previous human division. Scientific breakthroughs emerged from every aspect of the defensive strategy. Quantum communication technologies that were once theoretical became practical realities. Adaptive defense systems developed during the invasion would reshape human understanding of technology, intelligence, and collective potential. Dr. Rodriguez's research team discovered that the quantum communication network had evolved far beyond its original design. It had become a living, breathing form of collective intelligence that continued to learn, to grow, to adapt even after the immediate threat had passed. The Global Defense Command Center became a symbol of human potential. Scientists, military strategists, communication experts, every discipline had contributed to a defense that was more than the sum of its parts. Humanity had not just survived, they had redefined the very concept of intelligence. As the final analysis of the invasion began, one thing became abundantly clear. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The Krell had no idea what was coming.